This review is brought to you in part by Dean's Hobby Stop in Owasso, Michigan. Dean's has one of the Midwest's largest selections of used kits at great prices. They also feature new kits and supplies as well. Call Dean's to get their mail order list featuring hundreds of vintage kits, or check their website for great deals on both new and classic models. This review covers the 1969 Hot Wheels Dodge Charger funny car. It's a 125 scale Polar Lights kit, number POL988. It was issued in 2021, and this kit is a reissue of Mr. Norm's Supercharger funny car. The Hot Wheels release does not replicate a real race car. It's meant to look like a Hot Wheels model. Now, the red line tires and nicely printed decals or stickers do a good job of that. But that's not to say that they can't be, because I was at the 100th anniversary of the Indy 500, where a full-sized Hot Wheels car made a 332-foot jump off the big orange track. In this kit, there's 138 parts, and they're molded in metallic silver, chrome, and clear. Now, the kit has some large decals and fragile parts like the roll cage, which makes it more suited for the intermediate builder. The measurements, when you're completed with the kit, are about 8 1/4 inches long, 2 inches high, and 3 1/4 inches wide. Well, that's Newt tapping on the divider glass back there. He's our program director, and he's got a question or something to say about this one. Come on in here, Newt. What's your question?
That's a wild-looking flame job. It does look a lot like those old Hot Wheels cars.
It does to me too, Newt, and it brings back a lot of memories from when I used to have those cars as a youngster, flipping them around and through the loops. The orange tracks were just something amazing, and they really went pretty fast for a model car like that. Here are the decals for the kit. As you can see, they're very colorful. The register is pretty good too, and you can use the stickers if you want to use the pre-painted body and make it a little easier for more of a novice builder. But as decals go, they're pretty big, so they may need a little setting solution to settle them into the contours of the body. Here are the contents of the kit. The chrome is pretty good, and she's molded in color in case you just want to use the stickers, as we mentioned. It also has a nice set of tires. There's 2-piece tires in the rear. Those are the drag slicks. Mostly we'll be using, tube glue and liquid cement, but white glue for the windows. Now gather up these parts for the engine, and remember you'll need to scrape off the chrome plating and also paint when you do that to make sure that the parts will stick. Glue won't stick to plating or paint. Also remember to heed the manufacturer's safety and use guidelines when using any of the products you see or hear used in the review. I decided to wire the engine with spark plug wires, so here's the firing order for the 426 Hemi engine. So I'm going to drill the magneto out for the wires and the valve covers for the spark plugs. Here is the completed engine. You can see the spark plug holes in the Hemi valve covers and the wires if you look closely. Also note that the blower belt there, at the top of the belt, you see a split. It was too small. I tried to warm it up, but it broke. So what I ended up doing was using a piece of flat black striping tape. You could use just about any tape, and you could even color it black if you needed to. About 1/8 of an inch in width, and that worked out perfectly. And also the starter, which isn't used on funny cars, they don't come with an engine mounted starter. They use remote battery and starter that was rolled up to the vehicle. Now we're going to use either Enderley or Hilborn injectors, so those are both an option. And watch the color call outs on the instructions, because it shows half of the engine red and the other half black. I painted both of them red. Gather up the parts to build the chassis assembly. You can see them arranged sort of how they go together here. One of the things that isn't made very clear in the instructions is that this frame must have been used for different models. So at the back end you see there are 2 ribs there and a place for the rear chassis third member. So this ends up being something you'll need to remove. you have to cut off that last one and use the more forward one that is towards the front of the car. And then your chassis will look like this when you put that last cross member in place at the back end. And here is the assembled basic chassis with suspension parts, fuel tanks, and oil filters in place. And glue it all together first and then paint it for maximum strength. Here are the parts for the roll cage, and in the instructions you're told to paint it black. I think that it's supposed to be red, and that's the color that I painted it. Next up, gather the parts for the interior, and before building it up, I used the floor to assemble the roll cage by gluing the tubes together but not into the floor. This way they could be painted as one unit after pulling it out before, instead of painting the individual parts after it's in place. That way you don't have to scrape the paint before you glue the parts together and then go back and touch up the corners. The seat belts have a couple of ejector pin dots on them. You see them there. I made them darker, but they're easy to clean off with a little sandpaper and a scraper. Now you can see the major color scheme here. The roll bar, of course, was red. The floor pan is aluminum color, and we've got some flat black on both the steering wheel rim and the seats, of course. And the seat belts are a flat black as well. Fire extinguisher was painted yellow with aluminum trappings for the straps. Now, I found it easier to glue the seat and the seat belt, shifter, and gas pedal to the floor, and then add the brake pedal and the steering parts to the roll cage assembly, and then glue the whole completed cage into place. Now, there's two options for gauges. Raised detail on the gauges are there, so a flat black wash would bring those out, and a couple of ejector pin marks on the floor, but they're not visible once the body's in place. But if you display it with that off, you may want to clean those up. I painted the headers next. They're a flat black, and then I drilled out the ends of the exhaust pipes for more realism. Scrape any paint from the engine mounts or off of the engine where it's mounted to the frame, and go ahead and glue that in place with some strong glue, making sure that it's setting level and properly located. Now we can add the headers at that point, as well as they don't interfere with anything further. Now it's time to add those rear brakes into position on the rear axle spindles. Let's turn our attention to the wheel assemblies. Now the tires and kit, they've got printed red lines to look like the original Hot Wheels toy cars, but they were never really on drag cars at the time. Now the tires for the front are one piece with some tread and sidewall detail, and the rear slicks are two piece with just plain sidewalls. Now they're ready to be assembled at this point, and there's options for the wheels. And as I was trying to replicate the box art, I used those. The wheel fronts and backs need to be pushed in place separately, and the instructions call for part numbers 46 for the rear inner wheels, but I found clearance with the rear brakes to be a problem, so I used part number 44 there instead. You can see them mounted here. Just go ahead and add your wheels and tires to the spindles in the front and the back, and you've got a rolling chassis. The body was a pretty good molded piece, but as you can see here, they've got parting lines along the fender edges and along the drip rails and the roof, so they're easy to remove. Just use a scraper and then sand them off smoothly. I then gave the entire thing a light scuffing and a couple of coats of light primer, and after that had dried, I painted the body with a basic metallic silver. Here are the inner panels for the body, and I found it easier to just assemble these outside of the body and instead of trying to place them into position there. Now I had let the body dry and then added all the decals, and they're large and they require some setting solution to nestle into the panel lines, etc. And after they're in place, I used some white glue to attach the front and rear windows. Now there's optional side windows, but funny cars back in the 60s didn't use the side windows. You see the red arrow here points to a pin on the underside of the body. It's got a silver top, you can see it there. It should be removed because it causes an interference with the blower drive and won't allow the body to sit down where it should. There's no mention of that in the instructions. I think it's just a broken ejector pin. Well, you're going to have a few extra pieces left over, including either the decals or the stickers. In case, like here, you see the stickers, and a nice set of wheels too. Now, like most funny cars and dragsters, it's not for beginners, it's for an intermediate. And that's typical for this kind of model. But, if you like Hot Wheels and building models, this kit gives you the best of both worlds. And as you can see, it's a pretty nice looking display once you get it on your shelf. So if I were you, I'd buy one and put it on my shelf. We hope you like this premium step-by-step model kit review, and so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can do that by clicking on the icon in the lower right hand of any of our reviews. Or you can find us on our website, rightonreplicas.com, or on Facebook as well.